Hello again. Welcome to part 3 or episode 3 of how to play chess. So, the last video we covered how the pieces move, the value of the pieces, check and checkmate. We did these things rather quickly. So, today we're going to cover pins, skewers, and forks. These are beginners' tactics which you're going to be using throughout learning how to play chess. But first, let's take a quick review. Pawns are worth 1, bishops and knights 3, rooks 5, queen 9, and of course the king is infinity. Pawns can move 2 squares on their first initial move if you want to, or 1. After that, it's always just 1. They capture diagonally. Okay. And if you reach the 5th rank, your 5th rank, and your opponent moves 2 spaces, you can still capture that pawn en passant. Okay, that's en passant. Castling is done by picking up the king and moving it 2 spaces towards the side you want to castle on and putting the rook on the other side. 2 spaces on the side you want to castle on and the rook on the other side. Okay. You cannot castle out of check. You cannot castle through a check. You cannot castle into check. You can never put your king in danger. So, if white's bishop was, for example, here. If black's bishop was there, white cannot castle on that side because this bishop moving diagonally is controlling that square. So the king cannot pass over that square. I call that castling through a check. The king cannot also castle into check. Okay? For example, this bishop is controlling this diagonal. I cannot castle on this side because I immediately put myself in check. Cannot do that. Okay. I cannot castle if I have moved my king at any time during the game, even if I move it back. I cannot castle on the side that I moved my rook at any time during the game, even if I move it back. Okay. There is actually one funny thing about castling. There was a grandmaster, a Russian grandmaster many decades ago, who actually questioned, you can castle if your rook is being attacked, as long as the king doesn't castle into danger or doesn't go over squares that are being attacked. You can castle while your rook is under attack. That's just something some people ask. It's not often mentioned. Okay. All right. So, what is? Let me just put these pieces on the side of the board so I could make it look more official here. Okay. So, what is check? What is the difference between check and checkmate? Okay. Let's say that we don't have anything back here, and and black moves his rook here. That is checkmate. It is checkmate even without these pawns here. Okay? Because the king cannot escape. And remember, when you're in check, you have to get out of it. If you can't, you lost the game. That's checkmate. However, if white had moved this pawn, either this one or this one, usually like the one in front of it, that's no longer checkmate. So if this was the position before, black just moved the rook here, it is now only check because the king can escape. Okay? Or, for example, if, say, if, say, white had a bishop here, okay? One way to lose a piece is to not realize that there's a bishop sitting there. And black thinks he's being smart and he's going to call that checkmate, but it's not true. It's only check. Why? Because the bishop can capture the rook. Okay? These are just a few examples. So, let me show you what a pin is. A pin is when a piece is either incapable of moving because of a check, or for example, you might have your really high power piece like your queen sitting in back of a pawn, for example, or a knight, and the knight would be pinned or the pawn would be pinned. So this is a pin of the pawn. They call this a critical pin. A critical pin because white absolutely cannot move this pawn because he'll be putting himself into check, into danger. A non-critical pin now, white can legally move this pawn, but it would be silly of white to do that because he's going to lose his queen. Okay, so that is a pin though. So this pawn is pinned, and this is a critical pin. Okay, that pawn is pinned. There's other things you can pin with too. For example, I mean, I don't know. Let's just say a knight was here, so that knight is pinned. You know, all right. That's a pin. That knight is pinned. I cannot move that knight because the rook is there, and I'll be putting my rook, my king in danger of being captured. It'll be check or even checkmate. Okay. Now, what is a skewer? A skewer is like a pin, except the more important piece is up front. So if I was black and I moved my rook down here, put the king in check. It's check because the king can escape. Remember, when you're in check, you must get out of check if it's legally possible. By blocking it, by moving the king, etc., capturing the checking piece. So in this case, this is a skewer. The knight is being skewered. The king has to get out of check. He has to move. And now black can freely capture the knight. This is especially a cool tactic when it's a more important piece like a queen or a rook. You know, usually the rook is sitting back here. But if you could do that to the queen, you got yourself a big prize. It's 8 o'clock. Okay, that's pins and skewers. And again, you'll be using these tactics throughout as you get better in chess. These are the things that you use. to beat your opponent. Forks. The most common piece that forks is the knight. The knight is a very useful piece for forking. And the reason for that is because of its unique way of moving. For example, if I were to get, let's just say, if I were to get my knight, I don't know, I'm just going to make sure there's no pieces ready to capture me here. Get rid of this too. Okay. So if I were to somehow or another maneuver my knight over to this square, okay, that's check, but it's not a fork, right? I can get out of check, I can threaten the knight. But what if in my mission to move my knight around, before I moved it there, say he's attacking my knight. Wait, let's just say, no, let's just say I'm over here for some reason. Okay. And I somehow enticed him to move his queen out here, or his queen was out here, and he didn't realize that's a bad place. Why is that a bad place to be? If it's black's move, that is a royal fork. The king has to get out of check. The knight is attacking both the king and the queen simultaneously. Forks are very, very useful tactics to use in order to capture pieces. And usually, you know, falling for a fork is quite simple. It's easy to fumble into. But for the more experienced players, they can often maneuver to get you to move your queen or a high-powered piece in order for set up a fork. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, I somehow got him to move his queen there. Maybe I attacked it with some other piece. I don't know, but and I didn't move here yet. So now I move here, and that's check. He has to get. Oh, excuse me. He has to get out of check. Whether he moves here or here, it doesn't really matter. He can't capture the knight because there's nothing to capture it with. Of course, he wouldn't have it pawns like that. But so he moves here. I'm going to take the queen. It's okay that I'm losing my knight for a queen. The queen is worth 9 points. The knight's only worth 3. So he could take the knight all he wants. I don't care. Or take it with the knight, or take it with the king. Doesn't really matter whichever piece he takes it with. The point is that I got the queen, and he only got a knight out of it. So what they call that is winning the exchange. I didn't capture the piece for free, but I captured it for a small price. Okay, so that's a fork. There's other types of forks too. It's not the knights are the most famous forkers. But there's other types of forks. For example, a bishop or the queen, for example, can be used to fork 2 pieces. Here, let me I don't know. Here. Let's just pretend this pawn is not there. Okay. In fact, there's a skewer going on here too, or a pin, a nice pin. Let's just move the rook. So we're going to make this just a fork. How is this a fork? Because then the queen can move like a rook, and she can move like a bishop. Of course, she's not going to do that because his pawn is here. Let's just say that's not there either. So that's a fork of a different kind. The queen is attacking both the pawn and the knight. That's another type of fork. Another type of fork is straight across. I can save one piece, but I'm going to lose the other. You know, I can save the knight, but I'm going to lose the pawn. That's just another type of fork. So as you're learning how to play chess, you're going to be using these tactics, forks and pins and skewers, and things of that nature, in order to checkmate your opponent. Okay. Let's talk about one other thing. There's checkmate, and there's also something called stalemate. A stalemate is a draw, but there's many times where people have a one game completely winning and make a foolish move to let the opponent force a stalemate. So what is stalemate? A stalemate is when you're not in check, but you have no legal moves, and that usually happens when there's almost no other pieces on the board, or mostly no pieces. Okay, so you have no other piece to move except for the king, or maybe your pawn's blocked or whatever. But let's just use the king for now. Okay. Let me see. Okay. For example, if it's white's move, it's stalemate. Imagine having a queen. You should be able to beat white easily because the white only has a king left. It can't do anything. Imagine having a queen and a king left, and you're ready to checkmate your opponent, and you say it's black's move. Yeah, say it's black's move in this position, and I strangely, for some reason, instead of going here and putting him in checkmate, I wasn't paying attention and I moved here instead. Now it's white's turn. But white can't move. You can't bring two kings together. And white cannot go here because of the queen. The right move would have been this. Oh, even that. No, even that is not quite right. The right move would have been this. That's checkmate. Can't bring the two kings together, and you can't get out of the check. Okay? But white instead, black instead went here for some strange, unknown reason. And the king cannot go here, cannot go here, cannot go here. It's stalemate. Okay? That's what a stalemate is. Now there's also that's considered a draw. But imagine you having the power to checkmate the opponent and getting him into a stalemate. Yeah, you kick yourself in the butt for that. Of course, there's other draws where there's just no way of winning. For example, there's no. I think a single knight and a king is insufficient material to checkmate. So that would be a draw. That's just another example. But yeah, stalemate is the worst of the. It's the most embarrassing when you have the power to checkmate your opponent, and you blunder and make a move that gets you in stalemate. So those are pins, forks, skewers, checkmate, check, and stalemate. I went over how the pieces moved, some tactics in between. Next time we'll cover some puzzles, find the checkmate, that sort of thing. Okay. I'll set up the board with certain positions, and we'll take a look at them. In the meantime, watch the first 2 videos if you're just starting. Tell you how the pieces move and everything like that. Review, and we're off to starting your adventure into playing chess. The black and white jungle, as Josh Waiskins used to call it. Thanks for watching, and of course, please subscribe.